Hello and welcome to the Bulldog Insider Podcast. I'm Matt Wellens, the Bulldogs hockey beat writer at the Duluth News Tribune. Zach's not even paying attention.
Is that my line? I wasn't. I was trying to get this back up.
Oh my goodness.
All right.
This is the greatest
Sorry,
thing ever.
start again.
Yeah.
This is not the first time this has happened.
I
You
know,
should keep
I know.
it.
At that time, I genuinely wasn't even listening to you. I was just like, whatever, he's just going to intro it.
Yeah. Oh.
And I'm Zach Schneider, the television voice of Bulldogs Hockey and My Nine Sports.
This is part 2 of our two-episode season 7 finale of the Bulldog Insider Podcast. If you missed part 1, stop listening, go back into your podcast feed or your YouTube feed, check out that episode, and then come back to this one.
That seems awfully demanding.
I advise you listen to part 1 before listening to part 2.
Okay, that's better.
I guess do whatever you want. You can listen to part 2 before you listen to part 1, whichever you choose.
We're not sequential.
Not going to be any spoilers. The season already happened.
Yeah, no spoilers. Joining us to help wrap up the 2024-2025 men's and women's hockey seasons, as well as look ahead to 2025-26, it's the voice of the Bulldogs on KDAL, Bruce Siski.
And I'm just going to get punchier and punchier as this goes on.
Yeah. Again, go back to part 1 where we make fun of Bruce for the first few minutes. Mm-hmm. This episode is dedicated to all of you, our listeners and viewers. We're going to answer as many of your questions as we can, so let's get right into it. First one, I feel like he gets the spot of honor here. First question from Biddy, submitted via Blue Sky. Who are some upperclassmen for the UMD men who could be poised for a breakout year in 2025-2026? Guys, who do you got on your list?
I said Anthony Benghini, although he might have already had that breakout season. I don't know. I don't know what the ceiling is for him, to be honest. I felt like there were stretches in the first part of the year, and then again, probably month-ish after break ended, where I don't want to say he disappeared, but he wasn't as impactful. I feel like if we can get a little more consistency out of him, I don't know what, from a production standpoint, what his ceiling is. If he's a 15, 20 goal guy, though, we'll take it.
Yeah, his breakout might have to include some assists to consider it a true breakout.
What fun is that?
But he does score a lot of goals. He got 12 this year, right? So
yep.
Yeah, so Gino, 12 goals this year, but they came in bunches. 7 goals in a 6-game stretch against Stonehill, North Dakota, and Miami between October 25th and November 16th. He had that hat trick against North Dakota, but I think they were down 5-0 already.
Yeah, when he scored his first goal, they were down 5-0.
Yeah.
And they lost 7-3.
And then he had 3 goals in the final regular season series at St. Cloud. At St. Cloud State. So he had a 10-game goal drought and a 9-game goal drought. So that would be my player that I could see maybe having the breakout year of the upperclassmen. I don't know if they need him to score more, but be more consistent. And his goals need to be more impactful. He's got to score before the team is down 5-0 against North Dakota. And I mean, good for him racking up goals against Stonehill and Miami. I wish more players would do that, but he's got to score against other teams as well, Western and Omaha and CC.
Yeah, those 12 goals are awfully inflated when you consider that some of them came against Stonehill and Miami. I mean, it's kind of the Caitlin Kramer effect on the women's side. I think for her to be a truly impactful player, she has to score in bigger moments against better teams. Anthony Benghini, probably the same way. I put Jack Smith in this category. Not necessarily needs to score 15, 20 goals, but just a guy that if he can stay healthy, he did for most of this year, hopefully is poised to take a good step and maybe be a top 6 guy, but certainly a really good anchor to that third or fourth line. If that's where he lands, that'd be fine too, because they're losing a guy who is really good in that role in Cardelloni.
All right, we got 2 questions that Rick emailed in. Since we're talking about the older guys, we'll go with this one. What grade would you give the senior class? That includes the 5th-year players, so Joe Molinar, based solely on this season's performance. What would you give that group? What grade?
You want me to go first?
Go ahead, yeah.
C-. Dominic James is pretty good at times. I thought Owen Gallatin and Carter Loney were overall kind of underwhelming. Joe Molinar was okay based on what we expected from him. Luke Bast, a non-factor. Will Francis is an awesome human being, but obviously pretty much a non-factor on the ice. I think his grade individually should be an A++ for coming back and playing hockey this year. But overall, I gave the group a C-. I just didn't think they were consistent or impactful enough for what we expected from them this year.
Bruce, how about you?
I thought about C, C-, and D+, and landed on C, largely because of two things. We talked about it in the first episode, which I guess now I just encourage people to listen to as well. Oh, well. Yeah, and that's what Loney did on the forecheck. I know he wasn't productive offensively, but his factoring on the forecheck and being one of those guys that was consistently willing to be physical. And then Joe Molinar on the bench, his leadership. And then, frankly, Dominic James had 14 goals and 31 points. So I can't downgrade that completely. But, yeah, they did need more out of the veterans. And I was certainly hoping they'd get more than they got.
Yeah, it's tough. I think the C is probably fair. Like, I think Dom James and Joe Molinar are probably higher than that, and Will Francis as well. Everything that guy went through. Yeah. Found out he did a bone marrow transplant in April, and then his cancer comes back. He still plays against North Dakota, and I actually thought he looked pretty good. I mean, Bruce, you saw him in person there towards the end of the season. For someone that underwent cancer treatment, he was playing pretty good. Excited to see if he can get in a couple games in the AHL with the San Diego Gulls. Like, those three guys are probably all B's to A's, because I think Joe Molinar did exactly what they were looking for. This was not a guy that was going to come in and put up a ton of points. They needed veteran leadership to help mentor some of those younger guys. And, he was the NCHC Sportsmanship Award winner. We learned of an incredible story with Joe at the NCHC Awards. You can go find that story on BulldogInsider.com. Just a great story, Joe is. And then Dom James probably isn't an A, because Scott talked about there was a hole in the middle, as he described it for Dom. And I think what Dom was doing there was trying too hard. I think it was at Arizona State. Bruce and I first saw it, where he was just trying to go out there and take control of the game himself, and that's just not the type of player he is. So I think C is fair in there. What grade would you give UMD's freshman class based on their performance this season? Zach?
I feel like I'm being too tough a grader. I gave him a B+ as a whole. And there's three tiers here. The top end of the group gets an A+. That's Plant, Shagabe, Hansen. Middle of the group, A-. That's Kleber, Arnott, Bentz, Betchen. And the group dropping the overall grade for the freshmen is the goaltenders. And that's a bit unfair. And that's why I feel bad about saying B+, because goaltending is a really tough spot. Anytime you come in as a freshman, it's tough to be really impactful. And we saw some of that with this year's freshman group, but overall really tough. Goaltending is kind of on its own. Hunter Miska is really the only freshman that we've seen over the past, decade of UMD hockey that's come in as a freshman and made a really, truly great impact in that spot. So kind of a tough grade, but I went B+ overall for the freshman group.
How quickly you forget Kazimir Koski-Suo.
Would you put him in the same category, though?
As Miska? Maybe. I mean, numbers-wise, they're a lot closer than you might think. The difference is that the 16-17 team scored more.
Yeah.
Well, that wasn't Kaz's first year. Hold on, I got
14-15 was his first year.
14-15, he had a 917 save percentage. Okay.
Yeah.
So then he got up to 923 there,
right.
And then he went pro.
I'll apologize to Kazimir Koski-Suo.
Yes, you should.
So he and Miska then are the two that came in and were really good.
Yeah, Hunter Miska had a 920 save percentage as a freshman. Zach Stayskal, a 901 as a freshman, but he only played like 8-9 games. Yeah, right. Ryan Fanti, Stayskal 901 was 22-23. I don't have the...
Well, his freshman year was the COVID year, right?
Yeah, I don't have
he was like a 9... I want to say he was like in the 920s.
Yeah, he was up there. He had a good...
He got hurt and didn't play a lot.
Yeah.
Fanti kind of took the net in the pod, and then they started rotating, and Zach got hurt again, I think, and then Ryan ended up being the guy, and then Zach played the Frozen Four game against UMass because Ryan Fanti couldn't go to it.
Yeah, Zach was strong there towards the end of the season. So it would have been curious to see if what his an entire freshman year. But yeah, since Kaz and Miska, a freshman, hasn't really stepped up. Bruce, what was the grade you gave them? Because I think Zach makes this question's tough because I think you almost have to separate the goaltenders and the skaters. Because I think the skaters it's hard to knock the season of those guys. I think all of them as a group I'm giving an A, but the goaltenders might be a D.
Yeah, and I ended up saying A- for the group because I thought that the skaters were so impactful that it's hard to downgrade them that much because the goaltending wasn't good enough. And frankly, I think there was a good chunk of the season where the goaltending not being good enough came down to the players in front of the goaltenders not being good enough. I think back to that Gopher game. Like, how many of those 7 goals was Adam Guyon going to stop? There was a lot of grade A in there that a high-end team was converting on. But I think as the season, and this will be a question I think later on, as the season went on, I felt like they were giving up fewer of the true grade A's. They were doing a better job defensively. And then I go back to the goaltending not maybe being what you wanted it to be. But I landed on A-. I think that group did a really good job of coming in and competing immediately in a hard league for freshmen.
Another question about the goaltending. Jeremy with a question via email. Since one of you mentioned addressing the goaltending after the ASU series, that was Bruce.
That was me.
Which of the 3 do you feel best passes the eyeball test? From my non-professional viewpoint, I don't know if we're considered professional viewpoint here either, but
I'm not.
I just feel the most confident for the team when I see Clayton Knapp. No relation to Jim, I assume, which is correct as far as I remember going through family trees. But he feels the most confident when he sees Knapp in net. Your mileage may vary. Guys, which of the 3 goalies passes the eyeball test to you? Knapp had the better numbers, though we saw him decline a bit in the second half there with getting lit up by North Dakota with 5 goals there in his last start. I think he then was battling some injuries at the end of the year, and that's why we didn't see him play again. I thought both Guyon and Knapp had moments, but the tough part of Guyon is just that last series against Arizona State in the playoffs was rough. Bruce, you saw a lot. You saw this in person.
I did. Yeah, I was there.
Yeah, you were there. Zach and I watched games at the end of the season on our couches.
Yes, you did. Which one passes the eyeball test depends on what week we're talking about. Like, I thought, and you were there in December in Arizona when Zach Sandy played, I thought he gave him a really good chance to win the Saturday game. I thought he came in Friday and did the job as they crawled back into that game, and then he played the Saturday game. I thought it was very good. Then we didn't see him again. But Clayton Knapp did have his moments, and I, from a competitive, he stands out from a competitive standpoint because when he's on, he's fighting for every inch that he can, gain to his advantage in that crease, and he's fighting for every puck. Adam is maybe a little bit more of a technical goaltender from what I've seen. He plays the puck better, and he didn't have any foibles, by the way, playing the puck. When he played the puck, he played it well, which is good because, I have Alex Stalock PTSD once in a while from his freshman year at UMD way back in the day. I would say probably Knapp of the 3 from a consistency standpoint, but he had, you weren't there in Colorado. That's right.
I was not in Colorado.
He was not good in that Friday game. I didn't think he was ready to play from the start. And then the North Dakota game, I didn't think it was very good. I felt like that was a game where they needed to get a couple of more saves in that second period, and he didn't get those. And then he got hurt the week before the Miami game. We didn't see him again. But I would say probably Knapp. Long story longer. But I thought all 3 of them had their moments this year. There's not enough of them is the problem.
Yeah, anytime you get the head coach to compare you to Hunter Shepard in any way, it's good for a goaltender. And he did that with Napper, talking about his competitive nature, the way he doesn't give up on plays. And that's the way that Napper, I think, has to play because I don't think he's necessarily as naturally gifted as Guyon is. Long-term upside, I think maybe Adam Guyon still has a brighter future. There's a reason, I think, and who knows if maybe there was an injury that we didn't know about to Knapp, but outside of that, there's a reason that Guyon started down the stretch for UMD, and the three of us aren't going to disagree too often with Brant Nicklin about his goaltending decisions. And so that kind of sticks out to me, unless there was something going on behind the scenes that isn't public and probably won't be at this point. But I think either one of them at their top end, I feel really comfortable with. And then we've seen enough on the bottom end from both of them that this is going to be an open competition, assuming it's the same three back next year to start. The competition starts anew, and somebody's going to have to be more consistent than they were this year.
Yeah. Again, we're recording these last two episodes before the transfer portal opens. At the beginning of the year, I thought just the way goaltending is gone in college hockey, when you have two decent guys, two decent players, someone hits the portal to try and find a better spot. I think Adam Guyon, I think, definitely fits that mold of the better pro prospect. And, at this point, I think if he were to leave, it would be college isn't for him. He's going to go on and sign pro. Knapp's the guy that I think probably fits that Hunter Shepard mode. He's probably not your prototypical pro prospect. Scouts aren't going to be clamoring all over him, but that compete is what stands out about him. And that may be the best skill anyone has in college hockey is just that compete. So I don't know. I kind of lead toward Knapp. I was surprised, unless he's injured or something, was injured. I was surprised not to see him down the stretch, though. Also at that time, UMD's out of it. So again, if you're looking at the goaltender with maybe the most upside, you want to see if Guyon can get things fixed. And I thought he was getting better until that Arizona State playoff series. That was disappointing. There were saves that I thought he could have made, especially
more Friday than Saturday, to be fair. I think. I thought Saturday there were some weird bounces in there, and maybe not as good a defense being played in front of him. And Arizona State played a role in that, the way that they were playing in the second and third periods of that game. The overtime goal is obviously not a very good one, and that's the last memory. And I haven't gone back to watch the replay. I was at the other end of the rink because that's where they set us up in Bullet. And as soon as it went in, I hung my head and I knew it was bad. I didn't need to see it again.
Moving on, John from Facebook, and this is probably, at least for me, the answer is going to be goaltending here. What is needed for the team to get back into NCAA tournament contention? Jace also had a similar question on Facebook. It's the goaltending. Like that's been the key for UMD's success during that run of 8 straight NCAA tournaments, the Frozen Fours, is they've had really good goaltending. And no, not every goaltender has been, well, a lot of them signed NHL contracts. Not every goaltender has been this, standout NHL prospect like people are hoping Guyon is. The goaltending has got to improve for this team, I think, to take a jump, right, guys?
It does. And when we say that, I think the goals, I don't necessarily like where we're going with all the stats that they keep, goals against expected and things like that. But this is probably an area that it applies. The goals against expected has to go down, right? Or up rather for the goaltenders. And what I mean by that is that overtime goal might have been, well, certainly was Adam Guyon's worst moment of that game. And mistakes happen in hockey. He just has to make that save. Right. And the other goals in that game, there's going to be goals scored obviously over the course of a season, but you have to make the saves that you're supposed to make. And even if they do just that, they raise their save percentage probably 10 points over the course of a year. Because both of them gave up, I think, some soft goals that they would want back. And then maybe you can do what some other goaltenders over the course of time have done at UMD, which is steal some games and some goals here with some spectacular saves. But the defense also, the defensive structure, turnovers in the defensive zone, making strong plays on the wall to get pucks out, that will obviously help the goaltending in the end. And I think that will get better just because that group is going to get a little bit more experienced. And hopefully that combined with some better goaltending leads to some success for UMD.
Yeah, and that's actually a question from Blue Sky here. I don't know how to say this. Iloren. I'm still haunted by some of the defensive lapses and the backdoor goals giving up. How might that improve next year? Zach, you mentioned just the experience is a big part of it. And I think that did improve. Bruce, you mentioned it.
Yeah,
that Minnesota game, Adam Guyon had no shot.
North Dakota even. He's hung out to dry.
There were a lot of those.
It did get better. From in terms of suppressing, stopping plays, suppressing shots. I thought they did a better job as the season went on. Yes, there are lapses, there are mistakes, because hockey is a game of mistakes. If nobody made a mistake, you never see a goal. But at the end of the day, they gave themselves a better chance to win games in the second half from the goal out than they did in the first half, and that's why they won more games in the second half than the first half.
Yeah, I'm still willing to look at the games against Minnesota and North Dakota, Colorado College as outliers, right? And yes, there's probably too many in that group, that you kind of got shellacked on a defensive standpoint. But this group got better. Minnesota early in the year is a really talented offensive team, and that was kind of the "we're not in Kansas anymore" moment for a lot of these freshmen who were just kind of spinning. And that's how good Minnesota was. North Dakota obviously has some high-end talent, maybe not as much as the Gophers, but they kind of did the same thing. Colorado College has some guys who know how to put the puck in the net, but it got better, and they played, I said this in part one, they played to 7 1-goal losses. They had 3 ties. I mean, so this wasn't a team that was getting blown out of the building every night. They just need to learn how to not give one up or to get one more at the other end, and this season could change in a hurry.
Yeah.
Another question from Jace. This is made for Bruce right here. Do you have an extremely early prediction for lines next year? And you do, Bruce, don't you?
I do. What's your first line?
There's 2 different ways you can go about this. First off, this is normally an exercise that I do on my blog in August-ish. Once the roster is set, before I've talked to the head coach about what he thinks, I post what I think, and then at some point we'll talk to each other in September and we'll laugh because he's read what I think, and sometimes I have an idea that he didn't think about. It's a rarity, but it does happen.
Is it a good idea that he didn't think about?
I didn't say it was good.
There's a reason I didn't think about
that.
Obviously, Plant Shagabe is where everyone's going to go.
Interesting.
Right? But I went a different direction.
Oh, God.
See, he complicates it for no reason. Go ahead.
So you can't have more than one. You have to have more than one line that produces, right? You have to. You can't live on one line. I'm not saying you can't go back to this. It can't be a look every once in a while that you're not going to see these guys on the power play, late in close games, things like that. That'll happen. But I threw Harper Bentz up there with Plant. He's played with Zam before. He's played with Max before. It feels like a pretty good fit, and that allows Jason Shagabe to play with Callum Arnott. And I know that's something the head coach has said he wants to see that. Those guys are apparently very close off the ice. And he got to see it this season. He put them together for about 10 minutes. It didn't work, not because they weren't playing well, but because that's the game Zam got hurt. So then they had to go back to do some different things. And then when Zam came back, they put Shogs back up with him and Max. But I think you're going to see at some point next season Arnott play with Shagabe. And I threw Mangini on their left wing because why not? Smith, Betch, and Benton's for my third line, and then I've got some combination of Braden Fisher, Daniel Schlane, and Matthew Perkins on the fourth line. And what other freshman forwards you're going to have are going to slide in there somewhere. Who knows if there's a portal loss, if there's a portal gain, how that's going to work out, but that's how I've got it right now.
Can you give us the lines that are actually going to, they're not breaking up Plants and
Not
Shagabe.
to start.
Not to start. He tried that.
I don't disagree with you. At some point, you might see
you're going to see it.
Arnott and Shagabe together, but
because
it
again,
won't be. It shouldn't be game one, right? You've got. This isn't complicated. This is you have 3 guys who were probably the 3 best players on your team this year, top to bottom.
Yep.
And to split them up. It just doesn't. I mean, again, Scott Sandlin has forgotten more about hockey than 3 of us will ever know. But that seems overly complicated to me.
It might be. You're probably right. But I'm just that was the other option that I had available to me.
Let's see if you rethink this before you post it in August.
I probably will.
I remember Scott talking about that line during the end of the year press conference, and it sounded like he was already set on that line is going to be together at the start of the season. And I think it's going to have to take a funk or something, an injury to break those 3 up. I get he would like to space things out. We saw Laura Schuler do it with the women, right? Like, I'm going to break up the Olivias. And then finally you go, let's not overthink this. Keep together what works. And I think that's what you have to do with plants. And
that's all
Schneider.
fair. I concede that's likely what's going to happen.
And the message, I think, is, this is Connolly Fontaine, right? Those guys.
And he's compared them to that
didn't
group,
spend a lot of time apart. They spent some time apart. I think the message that you said at the beginning is you can't win with just one line. Well, you got 9 other forwards that are dressed. Shape up.
And you perhaps that's the message, right?
You got maybe one of the best lines in the country is shaping up to be. The 9 of you need to pull on the chain in the right direction, because I'm not splitting those 3 up. They're doing their job.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, that would be my message to the other 9 going into the season is, just because you guys can't keep up with these 3 doesn't mean that I'm going to slow those 3 down to keep up with the rest of the class. The rest of the class has got to catch up to those 3.
And the other thing we learned during that playoff series is they all played their season highs for minutes the Friday game, which didn't go overtime. And then, of course, they eclipsed it with ease on Saturday, which did go overtime, albeit for 6 minutes. They can handle it. There's no question they can handle the minutes. Mm-hmm. And so, you're probably right. I wanted to throw a different perspective out there. That's all. If you're going to keep those 3 together, you put Harper Bentz with Anthony Mangini and Callum Arnott, and I think you're going to be just fine. But the bottom line is, if the other 3 lines aren't producing to some extent, at some point they're going to do the split them up to balance the lines. Every coach does it at some point when they've got a dominant line.
All right, moving on. That question I didn't think would take as long as it did, but Bruce
injected some unknown controversy into that question.
Nate on Facebook, could we get a deeper look into possible transfer portal targets? Jace also had something similar about potential targets to fill holes. The men's portal isn't open yet. There's not a whole lot in there right now.
Unless you like AIC.
Unless you really like
because they got 23 players
AIC, which these are the players I think Scott will target. I think you got to look at, Scott does not want to go into the portal, I don't think, if he doesn't have to. He has said he wants to be a draft and develop guy.
Mm-hmm.
Recruit and develop.
Yep.
Yes, recruit and develop. Laura Schuler, same thing, though she seemed more open when we talked to her at the end of the season of the portal's here, you got to use it. Scott does not have that mentality. If he doesn't have to use the portal, I don't think he wants to use it. So I think the type of player that you'll see Scott go after would be, now he might be forced to go deeper in there if all of a sudden half of his team leaves for the portal.
Don't put that idea out there.
But I don't think that's going to happen.
Okay.
I think you're looking at like the Joe Molinar type guy. If he goes in there, it'll be 1 or 2 leadership type guys. Maybe if there's the right goaltender. I often think too, like the reason those AIC guys, we could see one of them is I think Scott wants to know where a player's coming from. I don't think it's a coincidence. Joe Molinar came from Brett Larson. We've seen guys from Cornell and Mike Schaefer. Eric Lang's a longtime coach and someone that Scott's talked highly of. So yeah, I could see Scott throwing a lifeline to one of those players and bringing him in. I just think he's going to be very cautious with anyone he goes after. So people should not get too excited when the portal opens and they start seeing these top scorers or something from a Big Ten school or something like that.
Are you talking to my son right now?
Maybe.
He might be.
Don't get excited about those players. I don't think you're going to see Scott go after them. Also, a lot of those players are probably already committed somewhere.
I was going to say, that's the thing. And I went back and actually reread what I wrote last year, which is still the most read thing I've ever written for KDAL610.com, by the way, about when Scott went off about the portal. I don't even know who shared that made it blow up the way it did, but it blew up. But I went back and read it, and he says it. You've got your assistant coaches that are trying to get a hold of these players, and they go in the portal, and every single time they make a phone call, they find out that player's already committed somewhere. And they're like, well, he just went in the portal. He's already committed. And I went back the day before that press conference where Scott famously went crazy about the portal. He still talks about it, actually, once in a while. It was Mark Diver out east, and Matthew Wood I'm hearing Matthew Wood's going to enter the transfer portal, and I'm hearing that these are the favorites, and Minnesota was one of them, eventually got him. I'm like, well, how does he have favorites when he's not in the portal yet? Therefore, he can't talk to these teams that he's allegedly favoring. How's this possible? Well, it's already because he went through his agent. That's obvious. But Scott's not going to play that game. And you can say, well, he should. And I come back and say, no, I don't think he should. I think there's an ethical way to build a team and win in Division I men's college hockey, even in the year of our Lord 2025. I believe that. And I think Scott Sandelin believes that as well, and he's going to continue to try to do it that way.
Zach, anything to add?
No.
No? Okay. Any expected players leaving for the portal? I think the name that we could see in there, and this is, again, one of those where it might be best for both sides, is Matthew Perkins, the Vancouver Canucks draft pick. He struggled to battle. He struggled this season, to put it lightly. He just had the one goal. He was given opportunities. He didn't make the most of them. I thought he was a little better toward the end of the year, more impactful. If he wants to be a top 6 guy, I don't think it's going to be at UMD. There's just not the spot for him there right now. I could be wrong. He could explode. He could bounce back from this year, but that might be a guy who enters the transfer portal for UMD. And again, I think that could be good for both sides. I'm curious to see what Matt Perkins is going to do. I like Matt Perkins. I hope he sticks around. He's a good guy. I think he could be a solid bottom 6 winger for them. I'm a little intrigued about him if he's interested in going back to center, because he did have such a good freshman year at center, but UMD's also really deep at center right now, and I think everyone likes him better at wing. So, guys, anyone else you could see from the Bulldogs entering the portal?
That's the obvious name. I don't want to necessarily throw other names out there. I'm going to let these guys tell their story if that's what they choose to do. Perk is, again, the obvious one, because there was such a step back in production when I think, first off, he was in a position to be more than what he was last year, and it just didn't work out for him. And then you look at what's happened around him in that lineup where, even if you're drawing a lineup right now for next season, I don't know how you put him in the top 6. I don't. Even if you go off his freshman production, I don't know how you put him in the top 6 right now, looking at what they've got coming back next season. So that one makes sense. And if he goes somewhere, wish him nothing but the best. He's a good kid. But, this year did not work out for him. I think 29 out of 36 games he played into that doesn't tell the story. He was relegated to a lot of 4th line, 13th forward type duty in the second half of the year. I think he averaged 11 minutes a game, but I'm going to bet you in the second half of the year that number was closer to 8 or 9.
Yeah, he's kind of at a crossroads, right? And that's what the portal has allowed us to kind of see more guys taking the off ramp at this point. Because before the portal existed, this was a summer where I think the coach-player conversation goes, you want to be in the top 6 where you got an important next 4 or 5 months. And we'll see in the fall where you are, but you need to do some soul searching. Matthew Perkins is talented enough to be in this team's top 6. And there's no denying that. It's a matter of whether or not he wants to do the work to take his spot back, so to speak, from some of the younger players that took it this year, or accept that you're going to be a 3rd or 4th liner on hopefully a pretty good hockey team. And we've seen guys flourish in that role as well. But I don't know if Matthew Perkins' skill set, lends itself to that. He's, he should be providing offense for a team. And so, the portal has changed the landscape here, and it wouldn't surprise me to see him go somewhere where he can slot easily into the top 6. But it would also be, I think, a really impressive thing if he said, I want to be here. I want to be around this group and has a really good summer, and we see him in the fall and he's competing for those minutes. That would be a really good story, I think, in the world of Matthew Perkins.
I agree.
So we'll see what he decides.
And I love good stories. So I'm going to root for that too. Dan Jacobson, we got 2 questions from you that we're not going to answer. Sorry, Dan. First question from Dan. What does the incoming recruiting class look like for the men and the women? Dan, pay attention. We answered that in the first half of the in part one. Go back, listen to part one. We talk all about the recruits there. Hopefully Dan already listened to part one, watched these in order, and realized that his question was answered. Another question from Dan. This is for Bruce. Bruce, what's the schedule for next year?
Yeah, I'm not touching that. I don't want to get yelled at by anybody at UMD, but I will tell you what's already been reported by me and others. They are opening the season next year in Fairbanks. That is the schedule as of the last time I saw it.
Have fun with that trip.
I'm not sure I'll be on it. And then they will have a series at Minnesota next year, continuing a multi-year series of a multi-year deal with non-conference series against the Gophers. They'll play at 3M Arena at Mariucci, presumably in October. As far as home games, I will announce none of them because I'll let the university handle that at their diligence and whenever they feel like it. And the league's schedule will be out maybe by the time you've heard this, because usually it comes out out the week after the Frozen Four.
After the Frozen Four, the NCHC puts out its league schedule. So
maybe somebody's listeing to this late.
Yeah, that'll be out by then.
Backed up on their podcasts and whatever. So it's possible.
All right, moving on. Thanks for your questions, Dan. We appreciate your support. Do you have, this is from Jeremy, email again. This is related to scheduling. Do you have any idea how Sandlin goes about finding non-conference opponents each season? I realize it would be a lot of moving parts involved, so more of a general philosophy. Since they have 5 non-conference weekends available, actually they're going to have 6 this year, right, Bruce? Because the series
that is correct.
The series at Alaska is exempt, so they could do 6.
The last schedule I saw, they have not. They've not taken on those exempt games. They're sticking with 10 non-conference. That could change, though.
Obvious approach would be to schedule 1 match from each of the conferences, lumping Atlantic Hockey and Independence together. Jeremy here would like to see a rotation of opponents. We seem to be stuck with the Gophers each year. Could rotate in Ohio State, Michigan, etc. And having a BC come to town would be fun. I see they traveled to St. Cloud. You're not getting rid of the Gophers. That's too much of a moneymaker for both schools, actually. It's why both schools are excited to do, they used to play the home and home. Everyone's excited to now do 2 in Duluth, like they did in 24-25, and then next year 2 in Minneapolis. So, sorry, that's too big of a moneymaker. But
yeah,
Scott's general philosophy on schedule making, you need 2 to tango. That's the thing. And that's always the tough part when it comes to scheduling. The women run into this problem as well. Duluth, a little harder to get to.
Yeah. I can't believe somebody wants the Gophers off the schedule, but
there's always somebody.
Yeah, I guess to each their own. But
I mean, there's people that don't think conference championships matter all that much. So
another shot. The thing that I've always liked about Scott's schedule making, and we talk about this when the series come up, and this year it was Stonehill. It'll be Lindenwood in the future here, is he's not afraid to schedule opponents from a grow the game type of perspective. And he knows that with the success that UMD has had, he can't just play the Michigans and the Boston colleges and those blue bloods, so to speak. He takes a responsibility for helping other programs get marquee matchups for them. And I respect that about Scott and his schedule making. It doesn't lead maybe for fans to the most exciting of matchups, but that goes back to the sport is sometimes more important than the program. And Scott takes that seriously. And so that's the thing about his schedule making that I've noticed over the years.
Yeah, Scott puts his money where his mouth is when it comes to, not just saying we need to help these programs. He actually tries to help these programs. And I know from talking to David Berard out at Stonehill before they played in October, the respect that he's gained around college hockey for doing that is pretty high. I don't think that's going to go away. The other thing that's not going to go away is Bemidji State. I would imagine that they'll be on the schedule a lot more often than not, as long as Scott Sandelin and Tom Serratori are coaching those respective teams.
Yeah, and Alaska, Scott, again, you talk about putting his money where his mouth is. We've seen Fairbanks, the Nanucks here in Duluth number of times. He's finally going to make a return trip. That's the thing to know about like Michigan and Ohio State and BC. A lot of those schools are looking for opponents who don't want a return trip. All those schools would love for UMD to go there, they're not all necessarily interested in coming to Duluth, in part because it's not exactly an easy, cheap trip, though a lot of those teams have charter flights, so it probably is an easy trip. But they need so many games a year. Their athletic directors and departments want so many home games a year. So they're looking for teams that are willing to come in and don't ask for a return trip. So that's what makes the scheduling very difficult. From a different Dan on Facebook, what is Carter Loney's favorite crayon color? And I actually reached out to Carter to get an answer for this. It's blue.
Okay.
So moving on. Reed emailed this question: is Dominic James eligible for a medical red shirt since he only played 2 games the year he was out with an injury? Would he be interested in coming back if eligible? Zach, we talked with Dom about this on the podcast. He is eligible for a medical red shirt. The answer is no.
Yeah.
If he was healthy last year, he probably would not have been here this year.
Correct.
So
Correct.
It's time for Dom to move on to the next level.
Yeah. And again, Tuesday when we're recording this, last check, he is talking with the Blackhawks. They are working things out, and it's expected he will eventually sign with Chicago. So we will not be getting Dominic James back. From Duluth Bulldogs Hockeytown USA on Twitter: can I book my trip to Vegas next year to watch the Dogs in the Frozen Four? Why not? Go ahead. I don't know if the Bulldogs are going to be there.
I don't know either,
but you should book your trip to Vegas.
You should book
for
a
the
trip to
Frozen
Vegas
Four.
and go watch the Frozen Four, no matter who's in it.
Yeah, just go no matter
What a great event.
Yeah, I don't know, sitting here today on March 25th as we're recording, if I'd buy my first round NCHC tickets at Amsoil yet. So the Frozen Four seems like a far cry from that.
That's awfully negative. Okay.
Well, I'm just saying, would you buy tickets today?
No, but if I had season tickets, you're
That's
buying
not the
them
same.
technically.
That's not the same.
Kind of, because you're buying them.
Another question from Rick via the email: if Cody Chupp leaves for the Ferris State job, who would be the candidates to take his place? Again, as of Tuesday, Ferris State hasn't hired a replacement for Bob Daniels.
The great Bob Daniels. by the way.
Great Bob Daniels, yeah. Not just a great, the fact that he got that program to a national championship game is still incredible. He had a ton of success in the early days of the CCHA there before Ohio State and Notre Dame and Western, and a lot of those schools decided they wanted to invest in hockey. His Bulldogs were up there. I think Cody Chupp would be a great hire at Ferris. Former captain and Big Rapids. He grew up around there. Guys, who would be on the short list to replace Cody Chupp?
I got a couple serious ones and then a couple not so serious ones.
Let's start with the non-serious ones.
I got
You
3.
want to start with the non-serious
Let's start with the
ones?
non-serious ones.
Do you have all serious
I
ones?
have 3 varying in seriousness, but I think I would say more serious than not for all 3.
Okay. I don't want to say this first one is not serious because I think he'd be a good job, but Jack Connolly is back in town.
Yep.
And he's retired from his professional career. He has no coaching experience. And I don't know if Scott wants somebody in this job that has 0 coaching experience.
Adam Krause had no coaching experience when he hired. Scott has a history of hiring guys.
He does. And that's why I put Jack on this list.
That don't have experience.
Yeah, that's why I put Jack on this list. And I don't know if he wants another project, the same as he took on with Adam, who's grown into, obviously, the associate head coach.
Did Brett Larson or Derek Plant have coaching experience?
Brett did not have much if he had any, and Derek, I don't think had any. At least certainly not college.
No, but they had some other coaching experience, didn't they? I'd have to go back and look, but he does have a history of this. He does. And so that Jack is not a completely not serious candidate, but I don't know if it's very likely. My super non-serious one is Brad Berry. Because those two are good friends, and if Brad just wants a job that takes him out of the limelight for a little while, just wants to be in an assistant role, a la Jason Herter, who is probably talented enough for many years to look for some head coaching jobs, but was just really comfortable going out and recruiting. That's my super non-serious, not going to happen, but would be kind of a cool story if it did.
Brett, by the way, was a player coach for the Gulls in San Diego in 1999 through 2001, and then a player assistant coach for the Orlando Seals in 06-07.
He was the Jackie Moon of minor league pro hockey.
He was. Yeah.
That's perfect.
There you go. My 3 names are, again, all, I guess, mostly serious, certainly more so than Brad Berry.
See if any of them are the same as my 2 serious ones.
I've got Parker Mackay, who's scouting for the Boston Bruins, and I think if he wants to get into coaching, I can't imagine Scott would tell him no. I don't know at this point what's going to happen in Chicago, but I put Derek Plant on my list because I feel like if there's any possibility at all he comes back and coaches his kids after they blow up the coaching staff in Chicago, which I do think is a possibility, I would not turn that option down. And then the other name I threw in there, maybe less serious, but a guy went and played in Europe this year. I don't know how much longer he wants to play, but I threw Carson Kuhlman on there. Again, no coaching experience. I get that, but kind of follows that Adam Krause path. Okay, I'm gonna quit playing and get right into coaching. And a ready-made opportunity at his alma mater. I mean, just got married this last summer. Chance to grow some roots here. And from a leadership standpoint, I don't know. Does he have the eye of a scout? I don't know. But from a standpoint of his leadership abilities, we know he's got that.
Yeah, Parker McKay was on my list, and I think probably is one of the first calls that Scott's making if the job comes open. Brendan Kotick was the other serious one. Yeah. He's had some coaching experience in the ECHL, and I think would be one of the first calls as well to gauge his
interest.
The
world of all those guys, so yeah, it'd be great.
Jack Conley was actually that was the top of my list. Jack Conley, I think, is someone
it makes sense.
That might have been here sooner if his pro hockey career wasn't still going on. But then Parker McKay also seems like a really good fit when you consider his scouting background. Everyone who's ever listened to this podcast, very familiar with Irma, Alberta. But that Western Canada, that's a strong area for the Bulldogs. The WHL is now opening up. Parker knows that part of the country, the continent, and then his experience in general, just traveling the country scouting. He was actually at XL Energy Center over the weekend. He's very familiar with the rest of the NCHC. Parker definitely, if he wants to get into coaching, I think he would have an opportunity as well.
And another one getting married this summer. So again, not saying that you have to, want to grow roots somewhere as a coach. It's hard to do that, but can you think of a better place to do it than the place you spent 4 years and won a national championship? The two of them?
Yeah. Rick had a number of questions. Some of these get pretty deep. I don't know how deep we're going to get into these, Rick. This one, we actually had an episode with Adam Krause that covered a lot of this. So I might just do what I did to Dan and tell you to go listen to this episode. But how do you see the upcoming eligibility of Canadian Hockey League players next season impacting NCAA men's college hockey, both the near and the long term? Also, how is this going to impact the existing junior hockey leagues in both the U.S. and Canada? We are seeing some realignment right now, actually, in Canadian junior hockey with some BC teams heading to the WHL. I believe Penticton and Chilliwack are making the move.
And Youngstown and Muskegon want to move to the OHL.
That's a possibility as well, which I don't know. We've had a couple of guys on the podcast that would be, I know anyone that's played for Fargo would be happy to see Youngstown leave the USHL. They've talked about the horrors of that bus ride.
That's a long trip.
Going back and forth. But it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out with the CHL. There's a lot of teams that are going all in on these CHL players. I'm curious how many of these CHL players still show up on college campuses. Right now, it's a lot of the overagers, the 20-year-olds who are committing. I think you're going to see some of those guys that are committed to colleges end up signing pro contracts and never come to college. I think you're going to see some of these kids who were never intending to go back to school, come to an American university for a semester and go, nope, not for me, and possibly move on. So again, I think to get really in depth into that question, Rick, go back and listen to the episode. Adam Krause and I dove into a lot of these issues. Couple more from Rick here. With the transfer portal and NIL money in place now and into the future, could teams like UMD, Bemidji, Mankato, and St. Cloud essentially become farm teams for the big guns like Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio State, who have more financial opportunities? And he says a recent example is Isaac Howard, who left UMD for Michigan State. I don't think that's a good example. I think Isaac Howard leaving UMD is probably closer to, as we talked about, Matt Perkins maybe leaving UMD. It just wasn't working out. Now, I would have liked to see Isaac Howard maybe give UMD more than one season to see if it's a fit. I think after year two is kind of that good point. But At the same time, I don't know. It just the Isaac Howard UMD did not seem like a good fit. Michigan State has been obviously a very good fit for Ike. The whole feeder thing, I don't see that necessarily happening because I think Big Ten schools go after different players than maybe a UMD and a Mankato, especially a Bemidji State.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think the other thing too is, part of why UMD goes after these players is, you build that loyalty before they even put your jersey on. And they've experienced some sort of adversity, they're overlooked, and they want to come here and prove themselves. And I think UMD is going to continue to recruit the kind of players they recruit, and I tend to agree those aren't the kind of players the Big Ten goes after. You're just not going to be in a lot of those battles. You're not going to see, they take a lot of young players in the Big Ten. You just don't see a lot of 18 and 19-year-old freshmen coming into UMD and making the kind of impact you have to make to get noticed by a Big Ten school.
Yeah, and I agree with Matt. I don't think Isaac Howard left for money or an NIL deal. I mean, if his coach isn't hired at Michigan State, he probably comes back to UMD for at least another year, and who knows what happens then. We rewrite the course of history a little bit, perhaps. But Scott will say pretty defiantly he wants people that want to be here. Mm-hmm. And they're recruiting talented hockey players, yes, but they're also recruiting people. And I think that this coaching staff has, a few that have left, but every program does. And I think the majority of kids want to be part of this program. And I think that the last 3 years and the struggles this team has had notwithstanding, UMD is still very good standing, and Scott Sandlin is still a very revered coach by a lot of younger players. And the fact that he's still here and has hopefully several good years ahead with a talented group means that some younger players want to be in Duluth. And I think it's a tough decision too. I mean, I think that one thing we overlook is a decision for a 20-year-old, 21-year-old to, for a lot of them, have a dream of playing Division I college hockey. Maybe it's at a specific location. To make that decision, I don't think it's something that they take lightly. I mean, and even Matthew Perkins, who maybe didn't grow up, in his early childhood years dreaming of being a Bulldog, but since he committed, he wanted to be here. He's put a lot of work in. I don't think he's deciding, in a couple minutes that he wants to leave. Blake Biondi last year was another good example. Blake did grow up wanting to be a Bulldog, and I don't think it was very easy for him to say, this is the end of the road and I want to go to Notre Dame. So, I think that sometimes we overlook maybe how hard a decision it is for the kid too. Yeah, and I don't want to downplay this too much. There are teams out there right now that are trying to poach players from St. Cloud State. North Dakota is fighting this right now. In fact, North Dakota's already lost a player that we'll hear about pretty quickly after the transfer portal opens. Everyone in the NCHC is fighting it. I'm sure the CCHA schools are fighting it. We saw how quickly Northern Michigan got gutted when they did the coaching change. There is some of that going around, but if you recruit the right players, I don't think it's going to be a problem. Like this freshman class, normally I would say, you probably need to worry about schools coming after the Plant Brothers and Shagabe and all of them. But Scott recruited the right guys that want to be here. The Plant Brothers aren't leaving UMD unless Derek gets a head coaching job somewhere else, which again, I don't think he's.
I heard North Dakota's got an opening.
Yeah, I was going to say there's one open. We joked about that.
There is an opening.
The plans turn into biggest heel.
That would be an epic heel turn.
You'd have to Photoshop the one of the plans kicking Scott Sandlin on the John Cena Cody Rhodes bit from whatever the pay-per-view was they just had. Yeah. That would be as big as John Cena turning heel if the plants went to North Dakota. But I don't think that's happening. No.
All right, a couple more quick hitters to close this out. Who do you guys have in the Frozen Four? Jace actually asks, who do you think makes the Frozen Four, and who do you hope makes the Frozen Four?
Who do I think? I said Minnesota, BU, BC, and Maine. Who do I want? Western Michigan, Ohio State, Denver, and Connecticut. I want to see UConn in the Frozen Four. That'd be a cool story. Western Michigan, same thing. It'd be really cool to see him in the Frozen Four. And I am a big Steve Rollick fan going way back. I think he's done a great job with the Buckeyes this year, and a little recognition for that would be cool to see.
Yeah, kind of the same with a few key differences. Think are there BC, Western, UConn, and Michigan State. Hope is Denver, Minnesota State, Maine, and Ohio State. So we just flipped Maine and UConn in those two, and then a couple other. I'm not going to pick Minnesota. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I didn't want to. Trust me.
I know.
19-day layoff. That's what makes that tough.
Yeah, but UMass's layoff is almost as long.
Right.
I think they caught a break with who they're going to play.
I think Western Michigan, I like them out there. I'm going to not reveal my full bracket because I'm going to post a story later of me versus my kindergartner.
Nice.
A long time ago, I took on my now past dog, Roxy, who had a huge first round upset that everyone thought, oh, what a dumb dog. Why would they pick that? And it came true. That's a teaser for what's coming up here. I'm going to take on Jack, go head to head with my kindergartner.
How did he pick?
Jack, I just asked him who would win these games.
He didn't have to do anything. How did your dog pick?
I put treats on pieces of paper and then whatever piece of paper.
Okay, you didn't do that for Jack?
I did not do that for Jack.
Pick the fruit snack.
I mean, that's if I wanted to get my toddler involved. That maybe we'll see if I can beat Jack. Then maybe I will take on my other kid, Dylan.
The final boss.
Yeah, stepping up, and then who knows? Maybe by year 3, our puppy Noah will be able to focus enough to not just run around the house. Who do you think, Bruce? You've been ripping on this school all for 2 episodes now. Who do you think the next coach of North Dakota will be?
Well, oddly enough,
question from Jace.
I may have been accidentally put into a group chat with the AD and the school president. Oh wait, that's something else. My list, I tend to think because anybody have a coach by the time this gets released, because it seems like they're trying to go quick with this, and I get it because the portal opens up this weekend. I tend to think they're going to stay in the family. They've only hired one side of the family in a long time. That coach has the lowest winning percentage in program history. So I think it's going to be a tougher sell unless they can get Dave Haxtell back to hire. And even he's not outside the family. He's in the family. He was there for 10 years, whatever it was. I think Jason Herter at Western Michigan's got a shot at this. I think Dane Jackson, the current associate coach, has a shot at this. 2 names outside right now, but they're part of the family because they went there. Aaron Schneekloth with the AHL Colorado team. And then Matt Smaby, who's coaching down in Waterloo. I keep hearing that he's an up-and-coming coach. This might be a bit of a jump, but I think I would put him on the short list. And then if they're going outside the family and they don't want to, and they don't want to wait, if Jeff Blashill wants to get back in college hockey, there's a spot for him right there. And then if they want to wait, then guys like Ben Barr, Pat Ferschweiler are coaches they should be calling. But I don't think they want to wait for those teams to be done playing.
You don't think Jeff Blashill's going to Ferris State?
No, I don't.
Back to his alma mater?
I do not think that's going to happen.
Yeah, Garrett Raboyne at Augustana I put on that list, but that would be an outside the family type hire. And, you see since the announcement of Barry's departure, I think most alumni and former players want it to be inside the family. They like the tradition that's been built. And then some of the fan base, that you see in various avenues, it's tough to gauge, but outside of Grand Forks, but you see some that are like, we're ready for a change. We want somebody from outside the family. And so it's tough to know exactly what's in the mind of the athletic director there, but it does seem like he's had this going for more than just the last couple of days as we're talking. He's had somebody in mind for this job.
You don't expedite the posting the way that they did if you don't have somebody in mind. And if he's got somebody in mind, it's probably in the family. Yeah.
I'm just going to say Jason Herter. They should hire Jason Herter. He had success as an assistant at UMD, and I don't think it's a coincidence that Western is having the success they're having as well right now. I don't know if it'll be Hertz. They might have someone else younger in mind. And again, availability. Jason Herter may not be available for a while here. So, all right, last question from Lauren on Blue Sky. Percent chance Nodak comes after our coach, percent chance he... Nope, I won't ask the question.
Wyatt's throwing things. He's so mad at that question.
So angry at
Yeah.
the
or the
question.
length of this podcast.
The percent chance that North Dakota comes after Scott Sandelin, 5%.
If that.
They should call him and at least ask him for advice.
Does that
You would
count
think
as
in a-
going after him?
An alum that's won
No,
3 national
no.
championships. And
What counts as going after him? Because they should absolutely make the phone call, and if it's thanks, no thanks, which I think it will be. And Scott, I think
0%
but
chance Scott
they
goes to
should-
North Dakota.
No, but they should make the phone call.
But they should make the phone call.
They should
but
make the phone call to at least find out what he thinks about the program in its current state and
Yep.
the job as a whole and the kind of person they should be trying to hire. As an alum, as a guy who I know hasn't won a regular season conference championship, but he's won 3
think
national
that's a
championships.
positive.
Yeah, that's
And
a positive for
that's
this
true.
job. He's exactly the coach that they want.
That's a good point.
Went to 4 straight Frozen Fours.
Yeah.
Did not win a conference regular season
No.
championship.
No,
Bam. That's what they want, right? Isn't it?
it seems like it.
Okay. Good luck, North Dakota. We hope you find your happiness and who you're looking for.
It's interesting, and it's going to be interesting when the hire is announced because it's for such a blue blood program. This is a tumultuous week for North Dakota, and if they can land this hire, then all will be forgiven and they can move forward. But if they kind of go off the beaten path with this one and the fan base and the alumni don't really like it, boy, it could be tough times up
Could be.
Highway 2.
I hate to see it.
I'm sure you do, Bruce. That's all the time we have for part 2 of the Bulldog Insider Podcast Season 7 finale. We're going to get hate mail from North Dakota fans.
Bruce
aren't we?
is going to get hate mail. Let's be clear.
Bruce, how can North Dakota fans send you their hate on social media?
Bruce.siski@mwdcradio.com. Bring it on. I really don't care.
And I'm
It's
just
the
saying-
off season. I got nothing to do.
Just saying, Matt's the one that invited him, so I really had nothing to do with it.
I mean, I got a month and a half before I'm going to go fishing, so I got time to kill. Go ahead and send me an email. I don't care.
Again, if you missed part 1, go back and check that episode out. In fact, go back and catch up on all of our episodes from this season if you missed any. We do have a best of from the first half. Wyatt, we might do a best of second half here. The Wyatt does have like a day job and real things to actually do. He's producing a documentary on sled dogs.
Nice.
Look forward to that one. That's going to be super cool. So we'll see. Maybe we'll get a best of the second half here. You can find all the episodes of the Bulldog Insider Podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Like us, subscribe, and rate us. For more Bulldogs hockey coverage, visit DuluthNewsTribune.com/Bulldog Insider. Subscribe to gain access to all of our coverage all season long. That includes this 3rd season, the off season. Thanks to everyone for their support of the Bulldog Insider Podcast, whether you listen the traditional way, like Steve Jobs intended, or if you're one of the cool kids now watching us on YouTube. It really means the world. However you ingest this podcast, we thank you so very much. Hopefully, we will catch you all again next season. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening.